The NBA draft is only a few days away, and this is a massive opportunity for the Lakers to upgrade their roster here in the next coming days, with one of two different directions I see them going, whether it's trading for starting caliber players with using that 17th pick, or keeping that 17th pick and possibly even trading down and retooling through the draft. What's good, y'all, and welcome to another Lakers Digest video. I'm your host, Okechi Apakama, and before we get into everything we have for you for today's video, guys, I want to bring your attention to something. There is 70% of you guys who have recently watched your videos who have not yet subscribed to the channel just yet, and if you guys want more of that, like news and updates, especially with the draft coming here in the next couple of days, you guys want to make sure you guys are locked into the Lakers Digest so you guys do not miss any of those updates. Now, with that out the way, let's hop straight into the topics we have for you today, as the Lakers are looking for upgrades at the draft. So, this Lakers roster is definitely far from perfect, but they have a great opportunity to really improve their roster here at the draft. And starting with a player that we kind of know here as so Colin Sexton could be a possible trade target for the Los Angeles Lakers, according to Jonathan Givony. And so he said that the Lakers will likely explore the trade market to see what type of veterans they can add to give to LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and new coach JJ Redick the best chances of competing this season, with names such as DeJounte Murray and Colin Sexton being batted around by rival teams as possible targets. So we've talked about DeJounte Murray some, especially during the trade deadline and also even semi-recently here. But Colin Sexton is a guy that we haven't talked about too much. And then I feel like he's a guy that's kind of undervalued around the league, because especially when you're playing in Utah for a team that's not really doing too hot and not really playing too well. And he's just been known as the guy that was traded in the Donovan Mitchell trade. But he's actually played pretty well for the Utah Jazz last season. Just look at his stats. And he had about 18.7 points per game off of 48% shooting from the field, 39% from the three. He also had almost 5 assists per game to go along with 2.6 rebounds a game. And this is also coming from a guy who's going to play extremely hard. This guy is a dog on defense. He really gets after it. He gets in your face. He can guard you 94 feet. He's a guy that really takes pride in the little things in basketball. And that is a very important piece that you want to have, especially coming into JJ Redick's new coaching era, because I'm pretty sure he wants guys who are hard workers, guys who are similar to his mold, where it's not really going to be about your physical athletes or abilities or things that you can do on the basketball court. It's how you can apply them on the court. And Colin Sexton could be a very good example of the Lakers trading for somebody who isn't really seen to be as maybe a star caliber player, but he can be a very good starting type of player, and he doesn't have to cost too much, especially if you're trading for some of those other big names that we've talked about, whether it's Donovan Mitchell or Trae Young. A guy like Colin Sexton probably shouldn't cost too much for the Los Angeles Lakers. Either you can throw in that contract of Gabe Vincent and then Jalen Hood-Schifino and then the 17th pick, and then you could have a deal forming for a guy like Colin Sexton. And then also the Utah Jazz have some picks as well in the 29th and 32nd picks. So those are a couple of picks that the Lakers can add to their lineage if they were to trade down from that 17th pick. So they wouldn't lose too much draft capital. And then in this draft, which is very weird, where it has a lot of players, especially exiting outside that lottery, 15 down to the 35, it's a lot of interchangeability. There's a lot of guys who could go here, could go there. So there's not really a group consensus of where a good amount of these guys could go in the draft. So even trading down for the Lakers could still get their guy that they could get at 17. So that is very important. But let's talk about some of the guys who the Lakers could have available there at the 17th pick. So the Lakers have a couple of options they have here at the 17th pick. We've talked about a few here on this channel, whether it was Big Zach Edey, the 7'4" guy, and then another guy to throw the name into the list is Tristan Da Silva. So that who also Jonathan Givony was talking about. So just here in this piece here, as he said, a new Lakers coach JJ Redick joins Steve Nash, Steve Kerr, Jason Kidd, Derek Fisher, and Mark Jackson as the 6th person to become NBA head coach without any experience or head coaching anywhere else. As for the team itself, it is the second straight aggregated mock draft where Tristan Tristan da Silva has been linked to the Lakers, who could be at use of this 35 or 39.5 3-point percentage in his last 2 seasons at Colorado to space the floor for LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Also, Baylor center Yami Massimi is another name to keep an eye on as a pick, as Massimi worked out for the Lakers previously, league sources told Hoops Hype. So those are a couple of the names that the Lakers could be looking for at that pick. Tristan da Silva. Think of a guy like Jaime Jaquez Jr., who was picked in that similar range last season. He's a guy that can kind of do everything pretty well. Nothing too exceptional. He's a solid shooter. He's got pretty good size at 6'9", and then he could be a guy that could be a switchable defender. Obviously, you got to put him on that stage to see what's happened, but he's a 4-year guy, so he's coming from a long lineage of playing college basketball. So you're going to get a little bit of a professionalism with a guy who's been a 4-year guy as a senior. And then the other guy, Massimi, is just a 7-foot behemoth. Think of like a Bismack Biyombo, but with just a bunch of girth and a bunch of size. So that is what Massimi is. He is a very good rebounder and a guy that can block shots at his position. His offensive game is still kind of coming around, while he has shown the abilities to be just a pick and roll finisher at this point, and a lob finisher and a lob threat. A very good one at that, because he's a guy that has got pretty big hands and is a very good target and can really finish those above the rim. So he can be a guy that can be looked at as a backup, especially if you were to pick him at that 17th pick. And then he can be a guy that can be a bit of a bruiser and then a bit of a rebounder. Although some of his offensive skills are still kind of developing and still coming fine-tuning, he can be a guy that you can plug in right away, and then be a guy that can back up a guy like Anthony Davis, especially at that center spot where the Lakers were pretty light at last season, especially when Christian Wood went down with injury for the second half of the season. And while Jackson Hayes played well, he still isn't that type of player that the Lakers need as far as like a physically dominant 5. So Massimi is a guy that also fits that bill. But there is a couple of other names the Lakers could have their eyes on at that 17th pick. And so besides da Silva, da Silva should be fairly soon for a team that's hoping to take a step forward. Massimi, McLean, Holland, Carlington, Shedden, and Edey are some of the names rival teams suggest might be in play as well. So a couple of these other names, one I want to pick, McLean. That's a guy out of, I believe it was Duke, and then he's a guy who is a very good shooter, a guy that is, I think, looked at as one of the best shooters in the draft, and then having that next to LeBron James and Anthony Davis can be very key, especially if you get that out of the draft and right at the bat that you know he can be a guy that could be a good shooter. And put that on top of the fact that JJ Redick is now your head coach, and this is a guy who was running off-ball screens his whole entire career, pretty much. So he's a guy who can definitely throw up some plays for a guy who can be a knockdown shooter for him and get him some open shots. And then when you have guys like LeBron James and Anthony Davis on your team, you are going to have open shots as a shooter. So he's a guy that I like. And then Ron Holland, so he's another person who was spent last year, I believe, for the G League Ignite. And then he is a very high motor defender, a guy that is almost similar to Jared Vanderbilt in some ways, where he gets after it defensively. He can really rebound for his position, and then he also has a guy that's shown some playmaking abilities, and then been the guy for being the number one option for that G League Ignite team. But he's probably not going to be looked at to score too often, so he just has to get a little bit better at his corner shooting, which that's something that's definitely something that has to improve if you're going to play on a team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But as far as a baseline defender goes, he is probably one of the better guys out there in this draft. And if he falls, because there has been a lot of talk that this guy could be a lottery guy, but if he falls to 17th, I think this is a no-brainer for the Los Angeles Lakers. They got to take Holland at that spot. He's a guy that can really shore up your wing defense. And if you add that along with a guy like Jared Vanderbilt, who you already have on that roster, and then hopefully bring back a guy like Max Christie, I think you have a very, very solid perimeter defensive attack. And a lot of guys who can do a lot of different things at that spot. But Let us know what you guys think in the comments down below of what you think the Lakers should do here at that pick. Whether do you think they should trade that 17 pick and then possibly couple them in to get a Colin Sexton or maybe even a DeJounte Murray to try to upgrade that way to get a starting caliber player? Or should they try to build through the draft and get some of these younger guys, whether it is a Tristan da Silva, so a more sound senior type of player, or you can get a guy like Ryan Holland, so a person who is a very versatile defender, or Massimi, who we were talking about earlier, who is a very big center, very good screen center, and a guy that can just really be a physical bruising force. So, what do you think the Lakers should do? Let us know in the comments down below. I have been your host, Okechi Apakama, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.